records. Everyone wants to be able to claim that they have the tallest. Well, we already went over that in another video. The longest. Well, maybe for another video, or maybe even the fastest roller coaster in the world. Every time a coaster breaks that speed record, it's a big deal. It helps out the park because of how well they can market that attraction, and it helps out the amusement industry by showing that we can go further than ever thought possible. There have been many coasters that have gone for that speed record before, so here we are to take a look at how that record has changed over time. To start off, we have to go way back to the year of 1813 when the first true roller coaster, Les Montagnes Russes à Belleville, opened in Belleville, France. I can't find a recorded speed of this ride, and it was probably pretty slow because of the technology on offer back then, but since it was the first, it would have obviously been the fastest. Then, in 1884, the first roller coaster opened with a recorded speed, which also just happened to be the first roller coaster in the United States, Gravity Pleasure Switchback Railway at Coney Island, traveling an absolutely insane 6 miles an hour. Think about that. Anyone with any sort of speed could outrun this extreme roller coaster. Gravity Pleasure didn't last long though, closing after only a short few seasons. In 1892, another Switchback Railway opened, this one being the first coaster to ever operate at Cedar Point and the first coaster to break 10 miles an hour. The impact of their first coaster showed Cedar Point just how much record-breaking coasters could do for a park, and without it, we wouldn't have coasters like Millennium Force and Steel Vengeance. In 1901, Cedar Point's Switchback Railway closed, which would forfeit the record to the next fastest coaster. But Lakemont Park didn't want to have the record given to them because they were second. They wanted to break that record when they opened the 18-mile-an-hour Leap the Dips. Leap the Dips is currently the oldest standing coaster in the world, but it is in SBNO mode, so I highly recommend that you support the park so they can get this classic up and at it again. Unfortunately for Lakemont, they would only hold that record for 5 years, as in 1907, Blackpool Pleasure Beach opened the new L.A. Thompson Scenic Railway that traveled a whopping 35 miles an hour, about twice as fast as Leap the Dips and about 6 times as fast as Thompson's first work of art. Roller coasters were progressing fast, and that trend would continue for about the next 20 years in an era called the Golden Age of coasters. After another 5 years, the record would be broken once again by another coaster with the name of Scenic Railway, this one being the 37-mile-per-hour one at Luna Park, Melbourne. If you didn't know, this coaster is the oldest continuously operating roller coaster in the world, meaning that there has never been a period of time when this ride did not open for the season. The wait time for a new record breaker was cut down to 2 years this time with the introduction of the fourth roller coaster in Tivoli Gardens history to be named Rutschebanen. This would be like none other before though, as it was the first to break records, traveling at a speed of 37.3 miles per hour. I doubt that they were going for the speed record, but if they were, that 0.3 is kinda petty. But I mean, I guess we've seen stuff like that before. Advanced upstop wheel technology brought a new breed of roller coaster when Jackrabbit opened at Kennywood, traveling at a speed of 45 miles an hour. Now we're just getting in the realm of coasters that will be reasonable speed by today's standards. Not only did this new technology bring unheard of speeds to the roller coaster world, but it also brought unheard of elements like this double down. 3 years later, in 1924, the Buzzbar Beast, Pippin, now known as Thunderbolt, at Kennywood opened to the public. While the ride was massively overhauled back in the 60s, the speed has always remained steady at 55 miles an hour. During the golden age of coasters, Kennywood was the premier place to be, as they operated a total of 11 coasters throughout that era. Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk wanted in on the action too though, leading them to tie the record and build a now iconic 55-mile-an-hour giant dipper, sitting right on the beautiful beach setting. The impressive part is though that they were able to build the whole thing in only 47 days. I'd be willing to bet that wouldn't pass today's regulations. Seeing the success of Giant Dipper at Santa Cruz, Belmont Park looked over and was like, hey, I want one too. They decided to pull a golden horse and decided to build their own 55-mile-an-hour variation. By the way, you can still ride both of the Giant Dippers I just talked about, so if you want to ride a piece of history, just book your flight to California and start riding. Another 2 years would go by until the record was broken. This time the 60-mile-an-hour Cyclone at Coney Island would take the record. Even today, with its twisted layout, it would be considered an engineering masterpiece. Cyclone was designed by a man named Vernon Keenan and cost $175,000, which is equal to about $2.5 billion today. I would say that they got a good bang for their buck. After Cyclone, roller coasters started slowly fading away due to multiple reasons like the Great Depression and World War II. The amusement park world would sit dormant for almost 30 years until Disneyland opened in California, causing a massive resurgence in amusement parks. This led Six Flags St. Louis to take the record with Screaming Eagle in 1976, traveling at 62 miles per hour. That's pretty impressive considering that today the fastest wooden coaster in the world is only 11 miles per hour faster. After Screaming Eagle, another golden age roller coaster started, in which the record would be broken every few years. Before the record could be broken though, Colossus, the International Amusement Devices Woody, tied the record at 62 miles per hour. Colossus really showed the world that Magic Mountain was in there to make record-breaking coasters. The next year, the Beast at Kings Island opened, living up to its name at a speed of 64.8 miles per hour. What's even more impressive than that is that Beast was built in-house with the help of Charlie Din, so if you think about it, only one person on their team really had any idea what they're doing. You can see this because of how many modifications had to be made, but also led to an amazingly quirky ride being built. Beast wouldn't hold the record for very long though, because in 1981, Intamin burst onto the scene building the 66 mile per hour racing Woody American Eagle at Six Flags Great America. This would also be Intamin's first ever wooden coaster, and these gave them that experience that they needed in order for them to later move on to the prefab model. Without American Eagle, El Toro and T-Express wouldn't exist. That 66 mile an hour record was pretty lofty and would be a hard record to break, but YOMIURILAND did just that when in 1988 they opened BANDIT. BANDIT operates at a speed of 68.4 miles an hour, and also if you didn't know, the first ever hypercoaster and the first coaster surpassed 70 miles an hour was based off of BANDIT, so BANDIT really pioneered that new type of non-inverting airtime based coaster. That first hypercoaster was the Aero creation MAGNUM XL200, which opened to a speed of 72 miles an hour just 1 year later in 1989. It's safe to say that as soon as Cedar Point saw what YOMIURILAND had done, they knew they had to get a hold of one. One guest recalled their experience of seeing MAGNUM for the first time by saying, "We were just driving into Cedar Point like we normally do, and we're so excited to ride this brand new ride. And you can't phase us, we're thrill seekers." And we drove out onto the causeway, and we saw MAGNUM peeking out above the trees, and the car went silent. It's understandable though, considering just how unheard of a coaster like that was at the time. Aero would be at it once again just 2 years later when they opened the 78 mile per hour Hyperlooper Steel Phantom at KENNYWOOD. At this point things were getting just ridiculous. We were already past the point of the speed limit in the vast majority of highways around the world, so if you wanted to go fast you had to go down to an amusement park. Aerodynamics once again outdid themselves in 1994, desperately trying to find a way back to relevancy when they opened the 80 mile per hour Desperado. The word desperado is defined as a desperate or reckless person. This was very fitting considering just how out of control this thing felt, and even though it isn't the fastest anymore, I would say it feels even more out of control today because of the way it's aged. Now getting jealous, Togo and Japan would once again take that speed record when at 80.8 miles per hour, FUJIYAMA opened at FUJI-Q HIGHLAND. FUJIYAMA is Japanese for king of coasters, and that's a perfect name considering just how many records it shattered or came close to. But unfortunately for Togo, this would really be their last high quality coaster. But even though Togo wasn't done, Intamin was only getting started, and in 1997, Superman the Escape opened, and it wouldn't just break the record. It destroyed a record that many people thought wasn't humanly possible to break, being the first coaster to reach triple digits. At this point, you never knew what Intamin would attempt next. Intamin and Cedar Point once again showed their engineering expertise when they teamed up to build Top Thrill Dragster in 2003, which launches riders from 0 to 120 miles per hour in just 4 seconds. Although being a bit of a technical nightmare on a short ride, Dragster became a massive success, becoming one of the most iconic roller coasters in the world. It still stands 17 years later as a favorite launch coaster of many people. At this point, the Coaster Wars had been going on for many years, but the true climax would come in 2005 when Six Flags would top Cedar Point, giving King to Ka, a 128 mile per hour monster, the Great Adventure. This was massive for Great Adventure, who at the time was reeling from the failure of Batman and Robin the Chiller, and it proved them as one of the world's elite amusement parks. During this whole time, the Middle East had been on the outside looking in, but they were tired of that. Ferrari World Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates would take that record for once and for all when they opened the 149 mile per hour monster hydraulic launch coaster Formula Rossa. I mean, you couldn't have a park themed to Ferraris if you didn't have the fastest coaster, could you? But it was after this that everyone except for the Qiddiya group realized that you don't need to have the fastest coaster in the world to be successful, and the record has never been broken since then. Thank you guys for watching this video. Remember to leave your thoughts, suggestions, and video ideas in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later.